Welcome to the Church of Now podcast, where we believe kids and students and young adults can make a difference now in the moment. We don't just ask them to be the future of the church, but we believe that they are the church of now. We're going to be talking with ministry leaders about what it looks like to inspire and tell young adults and kids and students what it looks like to make a difference now in the church. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the podcast. What's up? Welcome to the Church of Now podcast. We're excited. This is our first interview podcast, so super stoked about that. Today we're joined by Micah and Magee, one of my best friends. We were roommates in college for a couple years, and super excited to talk to him. He is the youth pastor at Sunnyside Christian Church in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I've been there a couple months. And super excited because I know Micah believes in students and believes in young people. And really believes that we are all a part of the church of now. So, Micah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sweet. Thank you, Matt, for letting me be a part of this. Like you said, my name is Micah Magee. I live in Colorado Springs, and I'm the student pastor and First Impressions pastor at Sunnyside Christian Church. It's a great spot that's been exciting to see how we have been continuing to grow even after COVID. I got married just over a year ago, and so doing that adventure with my wife, Mackenzie, is an absolute blast. And yeah, thanks so much for letting me be a part of this.
Yeah, for sure, man. Tell us a little bit about your ministry. You talked about First Impression. You talk about student ministry. Tell us about what your ministry looks like.
Sweet. So yeah, First Impressions is a work in progress. We have a cafe that we just want to create an atmosphere in our church that if someone came who's been coming for 30 years or someone who's only been there for 30 seconds gets to enjoy and experience what it's like to be in the body of Jesus. But our youth ministry is so much fun. That's where my heart is. It's been my passion since working here. And when I got here, it was this past December, there were 3 active middle schoolers and about 12 active high schoolers. And this past last big event that we had, end of the year party, we had over 50 kids. And so it's been some awesome growth just from people coming back after COVID and seeing some structure. And we just want each and every one of our students to know that they are known, valued, and loved by God. That's what Unite is all about.
For sure. And, so we're in different places. I'm in Piney Flats, East Tennessee. Yes. You're out in Colorado. We have a lot of our students need to hear the same thing, right? Like they have a place, they're valued, just kind of what you said. But what do you feel that your students need to hear right now?
Right now. I think whether you're in Colorado Springs or Tennessee, the students just need to be reinforced with their identity. They're battling everything to kind of find out who they are, what they need to be doing, and how to get there. And just that thing. If any student came into my office for the church or just wanted to have coffee with me, I would strive to let them know that they are known by God, they're valued by God, and they are loved by God. And that's something that I see constantly in my ministry. I have multiple kids who struggle with sexual identity, who struggle with just from sin from the past that have been kind of defining them. And also things that are happening in the present that they're scared about their future. And all of those things can have a very binding just power and kind of gives them their identity. And it's just my one thing, if I could share to students, hey, you don't have to live by that because God has a different story for you. And that's why I love student ministry.
For sure. And we're talking about the Church of Now. Right. They are a part of the church now. They have a place. They have a part in the church where they can make a difference. And it kind of leads me into my next question. We want to give people opportunities to serve. We want to give them opportunities to do what God has called them to do, even though they may not know what that is yet. Where, we want to give them a place where they can kind of try things out. And so I know you grew up in church. Your dad is a pastor and been there for about 30 years. And we're actually going to interview him in a couple of weeks. So super stoked for that.
He'll be a good.
But I know that you've grown up in a church, and I even interned there, that has a lot of people doing a lot of different things, right? Mm-hmm. They're really invested, a lot of volunteers in that congregation. Shout out to the Crossing in Lewis, Delaware, right? A lot of incredible people there. But I want to ask you this, and there's a couple of questions in here when you were growing up, did you feel like you were given opportunities in the church to be the church of now? Obviously you're in ministry. Did you have those opportunities? Did you not? If you did, what were those like? And if you didn't, what do you think could have really helped you out?
Yeah. Matt, I was given some really great opportunities just to serve as like a student leader. And I really don't think that really had anything to do with my dad being the pastor. Our church was just ready to give people the reins in certain ministries. And I really think that kind of created a healthy a viewpoint for me. And so when I was a sophomore in high school, we really didn't have too much going on for our teens. We had been going into some new hiring processes, and there was great stuff for our families, great stuff for our kiddos, but not really too much pouring into people my age. And so I was in a leadership position at school and kind of used that platform to be like, hey, let's actually start something, and we can host it at our church or our house or whatever, that we can just be pouring into kids my age. And I was, 15, 16 years old, really have no idea what I'm doing, and just felt the Lord say, hey, let's get some people together and point them towards me. And that first night, I remember my mom's mouth dropping as we held it at our house because I didn't know what to expect. And 40 kids showed up, and we're like, what in the world just happened? And got to really just start something I wasn't fully prepared for, but the Lord used it anyways. And he got an amazing adult team around those kids and around me that led us in a way that was very beneficial and actually structural for my future ministry. And our church really just was ready to back me up, even though I was a 15, 16-year-old kid with no idea what I'm doing. They were like, hey, the Lord's going to use this. And I want my ministry to be that same way. If a kid has a dream or a calling, being willing and ready to give them the resources they need to serve.
For sure.
Yeah.
I agree. And I was very similar, had a lot of opportunities as a student to preach and teach and lead in those ways, even though I wasn't fully prepared.
Yeah.
But I think that's where we grow, right?
Yes.
So many times we might be thrown in the fire a little bit, but that's the best time to grow, in my opinion. I'd rather do that than read a book sometimes, even though I love reading books, right? Just get in there, get going. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Cool. Let me ask you this. When I say we are all the church of now, which is the idea behind this podcast, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So when you asked me that earlier, I was thinking of the church and what it should look like and what it needs to look like and really what Jesus would want it to look like. And I'm a very visual learner. And so I want to paint this picture for you. I think if you go to church, if you are part of the church, if you call yourself a Christian, you're a leader, right? You're put on a platform where people are going to be looking at you. And in the church, I want to see the church as just this pool of leaders who come together on a Sunday to learn to lead like Jesus. But, like every leadership, there's different roles. There's, the boss or whatever. And then there's certain roles. And I want to see the church as a ladder, right? And the only thing that a ladder is used to do is to go up somewhere safely and then to get back down safely. And so I want to see the church as a ladder. And each peg in a ladder is absolutely necessary. If you have a ladder, much like your leadership, and there's really only one top dog doing all the thing, what good is a ladder with only one peg at the top? It's useless. It's absolutely useless. And the same thing, if there's someone at the top and one person at the bottom, you still really can't get up. So each peg in a ladder is absolutely necessary, one, to get someone up, but also to hold the thing together. And, when you say the church of now, it doesn't matter how old you are, what part of leadership you're in, you are important to that ladder. For someone to get up or to get back down, you are important to that ladder. And so let's say you are a new student that just got into youth ministry and you're ready to dive in. You are now a part of that ladder and a very necessary piece. And so the church of now, which really just should be the church, right?
Sure.
You are in leadership, and someone is always watching. Someone is always watching. And so I just think using that visual of a ladder is a great way to picture the church of now, because even if you're brand new, 12 years old, or you've been there for 12 years and you're 60 years old, you are important to that structure.
For sure. I agree. We all have a place, right? We preach that from the stage. We say that all the time in our churches. And now is the time to believe that. Kids and students are some of the most creative people that I know.
100%.
And if we could tap into their minds, sometimes I think the church would be a better place. So not just the church of the future, they have a place now, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you this. What would you say to a listener? We have listeners, we have people that are listening. Probably have people that are older. We have people that are our age. And we might even hopefully we have people that are in student ministry that are going through middle and high school, right? They're going to be listening to this. They're going to be hearing what we're saying. And a lot of them have been told that they are just the church of the future. But how would you tell them that they have a place now? I know we talked a little bit about the ladder, but specifically, what would you say to someone, to a listener, to kind of have them understand that they are in the church now?
Yeah. I think Jesus does this very well. He almost, I don't even know, encourages or influences people to realize that they are leaders. And this doesn't make sense grammatically, but I think it's so true, especially in ministry. Influence is always, whether you're on stage or you're sitting in the pew, whether you're in the classroom or, you're walking through the halls, influence is always. And Jesus in his life was always finding people that were typically outcasted to let them know they're influenced. How many times do you think a person walked by a beggar or a blind man or someone who had leprosy, especially, and Jesus transformed that situation, and then they had a huge influence on people? And so if you're a listener, whether you have been coming to church for forever or you're a student just trying to check this podcast out, influence is always. You have influence on someone. It could just be a very small circle. Maybe it's just your family. Hey, that's actually a very powerful influence. Or maybe you're a preacher of a church of 1,000, and that's a very powerful influence. And so someone is always watching, and Jesus did a great job of bringing people who probably didn't have that perspective and letting them understand, hey, you matter. You're a part of my church. Influence is always. So go be the church. And I also love to highlight how many times Jesus actually drew attention to children. The Pharisees and people who were trying to always catch Jesus in a trap or whatever. He goes, look at the children, look at their faith. The kingdom of heaven is actually theirs. So if you want to be a good influence, have faith like them. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So influence is always.
Yeah, that's great. That's so true. We always have influence, whether in the classroom, on a sports team, whether we're working or anything like that. And it's up to us how we want to give that influence, right? I just told a story to a basketball team locally, and I speak to them once a week or so during the season, and even some out of the season. But in 50 years, in 2071, they're going to have a team picture, and somebody's going to look at it and say, that person made an influence in my life, a good influence or a bad influence. We have to choose what our influence is going to be, right? And I believe that the church should be a place where we believe in students, we believe in young people, because they do have that place now.
Absolutely.
So I love this idea. I mean, that's why I created this podcast. But we actually did a message at our church. It was graduation Sunday, celebrating our grads back in May, and the title of the message was "The Church of Now."
Okay.
And I wanted all of our people. I want people all over the world to know that kids aren't just the church of the future. I was told that as a kid, even though I was already I was thinking that I was making a difference, and hopefully that I was.
Yeah.
Um, but I heard a lot of people after the message say, "Oh, I've just never thought of it that way," you know. And I don't think when people say that kids are the church of the future that they're being mean or trying to be rude or anything like
But
that.
they're taught.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they are the church of the future. I mean, we're all a part of the church of the future, but we're all a part of the church now. Um, but I think when we start to tell people now, then it starts to make an impact in their life, and they feel like they have power to do something. But what
Mhm.
I loved is that I had some people in the older generation say, I never thought about it that way. I love the
Yeah.
way that that's kind of worded, right? Um, so how do you think that we can help all generations? There's 5 generations in the church right now. How do you think that we can help all the generations know that we are all a part of the church now?
Yeah. Uh, Historically, or I don't even know how to want to put this, but the word now is a very demanding word. I want. Ever seen that commercial? It's my money, and I want it now. That's what I think of
For sure.
when I hear the word now. And right now, brand new, right here, right now. It's kind of a demanding word. And Matt, I believe you are not going to convince anyone of what you're trying to get unless you're investing in leaders now. The church of now, it's a demand. This world is in a demand for spiritual leaders for the church of now. And if I had to convince someone of this, it's, hey, this is a necessity. We don't. This is going to sound harsh, but we probably don't have too much time for the church of the future because they need us now. And
Yep.
so, there's two different takes on the church of now, but I also think we need the church of now because the world needs the church now. And so, if you want to convince someone of this, you need to be investing in those leaders now. Um, I think the elders of a church have a very beautiful job of just kind of holding the reins of a church, making sure it's spiritually healthy. And actually, each of the pastor's job is really to equip the saints. It's to train these leaders. It's to understand that this is a necessity and the leaders are needed now. Um, and so, whether you're a young listener, old listener, be focused on that. Be understanding of there is a necessity of now that we need to be training these people.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. And I think of our friend Gary Johnson, who was a pastor for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of elder training, a lot of training with
Yes.
older generation folk. And he does a class on retirement, and he says you don't ever actually retire. You might retire from your job, but you still have a purpose.
Yes.
And so as much as we talk about students and kids, um, we can say the same thing about people that are retired or nearing retirement or right in the heart of their career. And specifically what Gary talks about a lot is you have a place to invest into people. Think of the resources you have, think of the people that you can invest into. And I just love it. I love that we all have a place, and we don't just sit back, and we're not just catered to. God calls us all to do something at different points of our lives. So my last question, it's been great, talking about the church of now, love seeing what your ministry is about, what your church is about, and how they believe in students and young people and really just everybody.
Mhm.
But I want to ask you this question. I think this will be kind of fun. What is your best or your funniest ministry story that you have?
We have had a lot since I've been here, but I gotta tell you what my church refers to as the Walmart heist. So I was hired in October of 2020, and my first day on the job was December 2nd. We had 2 months to get out here, get settled. So December 2nd, I am the youth pastor at Sunnyside Christian Church. December 6th, there has been a year-long plan in the making. For December 6th, we had our biggest youth event of the year. It's called The Gift. That our students actually get to go and shop for kids who don't have the privilege of having an abundance of Christmas. And so we had a bunch of families to shop for. and a very big budget to go do this, right? So my first event, I don't even know any of these kids' names really. I've been at the job for 4 days, and everyone is reporting to me. So I load up the church van, load up other cars because we had so many kids. We needed to do that, and we have this crazy list of kids. All of their likes, their dislikes, and we go shopping at Walmart. We're there for about 2 hours, our budget was like $100 a kid. So this is going to be like an $8,000 to $10,000 purchase at Walmart. And we had a tax exemption rule on a little card. And I was like, everybody needs to be in the checkout line by 11 o'clock. So hopefully we can get checked out in 30-minute time. Everyone's there at 11. We go through the checkout. The cashier is super cool about it. We go through, our bill is ridiculous. And I say, all right, this is going to be tax exempt. And he just stares at me blankly. And I hand him my card, and he kind of just stares at the machine, and he goes, well, we actually needed to know that before we scanned everything. And my heart literally dropped. I'm like, no, I have a time schedule. All of these presents have to be back to the church wrapped up by 2 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, just call your manager and see if there's any way to override this. Long story short, they couldn't. So they had to go and manually put in tax exemption for each item. So I'm sitting there, and it was like each item had a 12-digit code.
Oh my goodness.
So like 98 cents. I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm sitting there, and I have all these kids waiting to be fed. 30 minutes goes by, and they're just sitting there. I'm like, okay, we have lunch in the car. Let's just go have a parking lot picnic. So the kids go out. We have a parking lot picnic. I told them I'd be right back. We eat, which probably took another 30 minutes. So it's 12:30. Reminder, all of these had to be wrapped and back to the church by 2 o'clock. I go back in. They're not even halfway done. So I love my wife so much. I said, Walmart, I have to get these presents gone. I'm going to leave my wife here hostage with the card to pay
That's
for
always a good idea.
Great idea. That's why we love wives. I take the kids in all of the unpaid for presents out of Walmart to the church. And it was 1 o'clock. The kids start rapping like crazy. It was what I picture, Santa Claus and his elves, rapper going everywhere. I get a call from my wife. Micah, we finally got all the things put in. I'm like, sweet. Your card got declined. I was like 6 days in. I already know I'm going to get fired. I had to call my boss. She had to come from her house to go pay. And by the time she got there, the ticket had expired, and she had to retype in all of the thousands of items. Long story short, her car got declined. Something was wrong with the bank, and we actually had to call the bank and our finance lady, and they had to come sort it out. But for about 6 hours, I had robbed Walmart with about 10,000 bullets. The Walmart heist, baby.
That is an incredible story.
It was.
And such a youth ministry story.
Seriously, 6 days in.
This stuff doesn't happen to the seniors minister. It doesn't happen.
The Walmart heist of 2020.
Oh my goodness, that's incredible. Oh man. Well, to any of our listeners, if you have a story like that, I would love to hear. Reach out to our Instagram page. I'd love to hear those stories, because I know there's tons out there. There's got to be tons out there like that.
Youth ministry, man.
That's right. It's fun, but it can be a little wild, right?
Right.
We're kind of closing up. Anything else you would like to say to our listeners?
Hey, if you are in that position, especially if you're younger and you feel God's calling on you, but you don't exactly feel prepared, the Lord can use that. And if that's you listening, just take that and be sure of it, but trust God that He can get you through anything.
For sure. And you and I know best that even when you're not prepared, God can still use you, and good things can happen. And we know that from our Johnson University days in our Greek class, right?
In our Greek class, only the Lord got us through that.
Amen
Whew.
to that. We couldn't prepare enough for that, but we made it, and we're here on the other side. So, well, sweet. Super excited. This will be our first interview on the podcast that is shared. So super stoked for that. I want to thank our listeners again. If you ever have questions or anything like that about our podcast or for our guest, reach out to us through our Instagram page or Facebook. We'd love to connect you in some way. So thank you all. Thank you for listening. And Micah, thank you for joining the Church of Now podcast.
Thank you.
See y'all later.